Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of prohibiting the sale of fetal body parts. I rise in support of protecting unborn children from the moment the heartbeat is detected. I rise in support of Senate File 359 and Amendment H 8269. Representative Russell Critchell, in your remarks earlier, you described an amendment that was being discussed as it pertains to this legislation as lipstick on a pig. And I certainly would not describe this legislation that way, but if that is your vision of it, then hand me the lipstick and I'll put it on the pig. There has been no discussion amongst those who oppose this legislation about the rights of the unborn. There's been no discussion about when life begins, which is at the heart of this issue. And a number of individuals have spoken about safe abortions, which begs the question, safe for who? Is it safe for the unborn child ripped from the mother's womb? Is it safe for the child who is aborted and melted with chemicals? Is it safe for the unborn child who is aborted by being sucked out with a vacuum machine? I don't think so. I guess it depends on your perspective. This legislation prohibits abortion once a heartbeat is detected. And why is this important? Because unborn lives matter. And whether we like it or not, we have to come to grips with one essential question, which is at the heart of this debate, and that is when life begins. Yet the question seems pretty clearly decided by science already. What do human embryologists say about when life begins? Keith L. Moore, T.V.N. Prasad, and Mark Torchia, in a book they wrote called Before We Are Born, Essentials of Embryology, state, quote, "The scientific answer is that the embryo is a human being from the time of fertilization because of its human chromosomal constitution. The zygote is the beginning of a developing human," unquote. What a miracle from God life really is. Science tells us that unborn children develop and grow at a remarkable pace. We need this legislation because an unborn child has a unique DNA code from the very moment of conception. We need this legislation because by 25 days from fertilization, the body is developing. Head and trunk appear and tiny buds, arm buds begin to form, followed by leg buds. We need this legislation because by 21 to 25 days, the baby's heart is beating. Other internal organs are present and functioning as they grow. Early facial features appear. The doctor who performed the first ever blood transfusion for an unborn baby described the embryo at the end of the first month from fertilization. Quote, "By 30 days, just 2 weeks past mother's first missed period, the baby, 1/4 of an inch long, has a brain of unmistakable human proportions. Eyes, ears, mouth, kidneys, liver, an umbilical cord, and a heart pumping blood. He has made himself," unquote. By the 6th week, tiny fingers have appeared, followed shortly by the toes. And by the 7th week, the baby has individual fingerprints, and no two set of fingerprints are ever the same. We need this legislation because by 6 weeks, the eyes, which appeared in simple form in the first month, have developed lens and retina, and the eyelids have begun to form. The ears continue to develop, and spontaneous movement begins at 7 weeks. We need this legislation because brain waves have been recorded by electroencephalograph in the unborn child 40 days after fertilization. Brain waves at 40 days. We need this legislation because unborn children of 5 weeks have been seen to move away from an object touching the area around their mouth. We need this legislation because 9 weeks after conception, the baby is well enough formed to bend his or her fingers. In response to a touch on the sole of a foot, the unborn child will curl toes or bend hips and knees to move away from the touching object. At 12 weeks, the unborn child can close fingers and thumbs. We need this legislation because brain cells, which are essential for consciousness in an adult, are known to be present in the unborn child by 10 weeks. Nerve fibers, which transmit pain impulses, are known to be present before fibers inhibiting pain are completed. Think about that just a minute. According to scientific studies of the available evidence, this suggests that the unborn child in the first trimester may be more susceptible to pain than slightly older subjects. In other words, if the baby can experience pain before the body's mechanisms to suppress pain have developed, the baby might be able to feel pain at a much earlier stage than was previously believed, and perhaps even more acutely in the first 3 months of pregnancy. We need this legislation because at 11 weeks from conception, our unborn children have started to swallow. They can accomplish detailed facial expressions. They can even smile. Thumb sucking has also been recorded in our unborn children. Breathing movements have been detected as early as 11 weeks in our unborn children. And although the baby does not breathe air, this activity is helping to develop the respiratory organs. We need this legislation because by the end of 12 weeks, our unborn children...
Please state your point.
He's not on the bill. He's talking about the child being a life.
I'm absolutely on the bill.
Will the gentleman
He's talking
from
about the
Polk-
child being a life. It's
Gentlemen, will the gentleman from Polk and the gentleman from Crawford please approach the well? Seconds left.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To continue as to why we need this legislation, at 11 weeks from conception, our unborn children start to swallow. They can accomplish detailed facial expressions and even smile. Breathing movements have been detected as early as 11 weeks in our unborn children. And again, this is developing the respiratory organs. By the end of 12 weeks, our unborn children are longer and they weigh more. The child and the sex of the child is now obvious. Our unborn children have now developed an almost complete range of responses to touches on the skin. We need this legislation because there is evidence that from 4 months, our unborn children respond to sound. They hear their mother's beating heart. They hear noises from the outside world, such as music or the sound of their parents' voices. Studies show it is possible to contact our unborn children via music. One study I reviewed suggested that putting Vivaldi on the record player would relax even the most agitated baby. Our unborn children learn their mother's voices while in the womb. Studies even suggest our unborn children recognize stories which are read to them in the womb. We need this legislation because in the 16th week, our unborn children respond to light. Development continues at a rapid pace after 5 months. Our unborn children often even move to get more comfortable. Given the science, it is difficult to understand why we even question when life begins. The legislation before us prohibits abortion once a heartbeat is detected. The heartbeat, recognition of the end of life for centuries. How many of us have held the hand of a loved one as they breathe their last breath? As that heart so precious to us ceased its life-giving beats. Recognition that life begins at the heartbeat is recognition of a centuries-old standard. It is how we judge the end of life and a sound standard for how we should judge the beginning of life. On average in Iowa, we stop 12 beating hearts per day with abortion. We end 12 heartbeats. We end 12 lives. We destroy 12 of our babies, the most defenseless among us. They have no voice in this debate, for we have silenced their voice. As President Ronald Reagan observed, everyone that is for abortion has already been born. We must protect those whose only voice rests with those of us in this chamber. I do not agree with the exceptions in the amendment, for I believe that all unborn lives matter and that all unborn lives should be protected. However, I will vote to protect most of the unborn, and we will continue to work to protect all unborn children. I thank Representative Lundgren and all those strong pro-life representatives who have worked so hard to make this moment possible. Every day we walk into this building and we go under a quote from Blackstone, and it says, "Law is the embodiment of the moral sentiment of the people." The importance of this legislation is profound for our culture, our state, our nation, and the most innocent among us, our precious unborn children. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.